I let my homeless brother move into my house and he repaid my kindness by stealing my collectibles and selling them to buy a PS5, so I dumped him in a neighboring city. My brother came to live with me and my elderly mother a little over 2.5 months ago. He had gotten evicted from his apartment for not paying rent on time and getting caught with illicit substances. I didn't agree to him living with us, but my mom invited him to without my permission and begged me to let him stay because she didn't want him to be living out in the streets. Me and my brother have had a strained relationship since we were younger, which I won't elaborate on as it would take too long. But I relented eventually. I set strict rules for my brother as I wasn't going to let him lay around, being lazy and doing nothing. I told him he needed to get a job and help pay for expenses, rent, utilities, etc., as well as help around the house. He wasn't happy about that, but I told him it was either that or he could sleep outside. He finally agreed. He had to only pay $300 a month to live with us, which I thought was a steal as I pay over $2,000 in rent and bills. He was still unhappy with that. He didn't help out around the house at all unless you forced him to in the job that I got him. Because he was too lazy to find one for himself, he decided he only wanted to work only part-time, because full-time was too hard on him. And he called out often. He had no money when he moved in with us, nothing in savings, and all his belongings fit into a backpack. I got into a fight with him about being smarter and using this opportunity to build up his savings so he could find stable housing and establish a life, because he was not going to be living with us forever, given that I was going to move soon into a nicer area and a smaller apartment, and I wasn't going to allow him to come with. He told him he would figure it out and I left it at that. It was difficult living with him, but I tried to sympathize with him and help him out. I drove him to and from work. I did most of the chores. I helped him look into programs to help with housing and food stamps. I got him appointments at the dentist to fix his teeth. Basically everything he needed. I thought my deadbeat brother was finally turning into a fully functioning adult. I thought our crappy relationship was finally improving. But that was a lie. A fucking lie. Well, 2 days ago I came home and I saw my brother playing on a brand new PS5. With new controllers/accessories and some new games. That all had to total over $800. I was confused how he got the money for it all of a sudden, because last week he was complaining about paying the $300 in rent as it would leave him with only $100 to use for the next 2 weeks. I asked him where he got the money and he told me a friend owed him some. I smelled bullshit immediately because all his friends are also deadbeat junkies who are homeless or couch surfing. No way anyone gave him any money. I'd been packing stuff up for my move and had been putting everything into the garage so I could load everything into a U-Haul all at once. I am a collector of valuables, from fancy anime figures and Pokemon cards to vintage coins and baseball cards. It's items I have accumulated over the years from various sources. I went down to my garage to check some things, and to my horror, my boxes and bins had been opened and ransacked. I could immediately see that 2 of my larger anime figures were missing. An entire binder of my Pokemon cards and a coin binder were missing. Not only that, things were thrown around, so some of my figures were damaged and cards were dirty from laying on the ground. I put 2 and 2 together and realized that my brother had taken my things and sold them for money. And not money to help support himself. Money for a stupid PS5 that would mean nothing when he was homeless again. I checked the recordings of my cameras outside my apartment, because I have been dealing with porch pirates, and saw that morning, my brother had left out the front door carrying one of my large-scale anime figures, with the rest stuffed into his backpack, and returned a couple of hours later with a large PS5 box. I saw red. I went upstairs and just began screaming at him. He immediately got defensive and told me he didn't steal anything. I showed him the video, and he effing started crying, saying that I have everything and he has nothing, and that I've always been treated better than him and it's not fair. I told him to get my poop back from wherever he sold it and then to pack up and leave. We continued yelling at each other because he didn't want return the PS5 back to get the money, to get my things back. He had the audacity to tell me that I had enough money to just buy the things back from the pawn shop where he sold everything. Are you kidding me? He gave me the name of the pawn shop eventually, so since he wasn't going to help me, I decided to just throw him out. I screamed at him to pack up and leave, and you know what he said to me? He started saying poop about squatters' rights, and told me that I couldn't kick him out without due process, that I couldn't force him to give up his PS5, and that he wasn't going to leave. He then runs into his bedroom and locks the door, and tells me to go F myself. Honestly, if my mom had not been there I probably would have ended him right there. You would see me on the news for what I wanted to do to him. I am livid. I have never been more angry in my life. I decide that I am going to forcefully remove him. I work in armed security, so I put on my security uniform, which had a utility belt with lots of useful items for detaining people. I then bust the door down and it turns physical. My brother is very small and emaciated given his history of abuse and poor diet, thus I easily overpower him and cuff him. I give him one more chance to leave of his own accord and his response was to kick me in the face. I had already packed all his poop up, except the PS5. I drag him down the stairs, then outside, and toss him into the back of my car. With a second pair of cuffs I secure him in the back, and by now he has pretty much run out of fight, so he just starts crying again and begging me not to kick him out. I toss his poop into the trunk, and I start driving. I take him to the next city over and stop near an alleyway, where I throw his poop out and pull him out of the back. I release him and tell him never to come back or contact us again. He tries to make one last stand and very weakly trying to punch me, and I just shove him to the ground hard. I then leave. I sold his PS5 and everything, and I went to the pawn shop to get my items back. Unfortunately, I only was able to get about 3/4 of my things back, and I already spoke to the police, which said not much could be done about the rest. Well, it's better than nothing. My brother had tried to call my mom, but I answered and threatened him, and he hasn't contacted her since. The police also haven't shown up, so I assume he hasn't made a report. I just wanted to release this somewhere as I have no one else to talk about this with, and my mom still thinks I was too harsh with him, but I don't care and feel better now. Update: 2 weeks ago, well, I moved and no longer live at that previous address. Of course, my brother does not know that. Well, apparently, after I dumped him in that alleyway in a random neighboring city, he met back up with his girlfriend, She is in a similar position to him, homeless and an addict. My brother had been festering in his anger and hatred for me over the weeks. I had received some nice messages from him threatening me and promising violent vengeance. What is super dumb is that he's mainly pissed about me selling the PS5. I didn't really care because he didn't even know where I lived at this point. Well, yesterday, I got a nice knock on my door, and when I opened it, it was the police. The police informed me that Saturday night, my brother and his girlfriend had broken into my neighbor's garage and had been critically injured. My neighbors live next to me, and how the apartments are set up is that the garages in the front of the apartments are also next to each other, but it's difficult to tell which garage goes to which apartment unless you go from the inside. So, my brother broke into the wrong garage. My guess is he probably still thought I lived there and was probably going back to steal more of my things. Well, the neighborhood I lived in was not the greatest, Section 8 housing area, and my neighbors were known dealers/addicts, who were very well known in the area. I was cool with the neighbors. We kind of minded our own business, but they were not people you wanted to F around with. Well, from what I gathered based on what the police told me, my brother and his girlfriend entered their garage and were attempting to steal some items my neighbors had discovered, and they were high off some illicit drugs, and this apparently led to a struggle which resulted in my brother and his girlfriend getting shot. His girlfriend had unfortunately died at the scene as she was shot in the head. My brother was shot in the arm and stomach and was taken to the hospital. There's an active investigation, so I don't know much of the specifics. Still, based on the initial evidence, my brother will most likely end up in jail after he's out of the hospital. Given that he committed armed burglary, the police just told me my brother would be charged and told me what hospital he was at and his current state. My mother is very upset about this and is planning on visiting him tomorrow. I have no interest in seeing him or speaking with him, and she called me heartless. She honestly told me it was my fault that this happened and that I drove him to this desperation. It pissed me off. Why am I the one getting blamed for everything? I think that after this new lease is up, I will be separating from my mom and moving out on my own. I can't stand this bullshit anymore. I hope that he goes to jail, because maybe he'll clean up his act and stop blaming everyone for his problems. I am only upset that his girlfriend was killed. She was a nice girl who honestly deserved better than my brother. She was only 19 years old and was dragged into such a horrible situation because of him. Poor girl.